This is how I see us conquering the world. It's with love, with science, with reason, with friendship, with common ground. As always, it's a pleasure to see you. Protein milk. I find the idea of protesting quite fascinating. You only need 100 people to protest for it to make mass media, but 10,000 people who don't agree remain silent until the voting day. So you never get a true impression of what's actually going on. Has anybody ever heard of Brian Banks' rape? Do I believe Kavanaugh? I don't work on belief. I'd rather a court deal with it. I would prefer to abstain from judgment. So Brian Banks was one of America's best high school footballers who was accused of rape in 2002 at age 16. The accuser was called Juanetta Gibson. Now, Juanetta Gibson said that Banks had forced her into a stairway at high school in California and raped her. Expelled from school and then later convicted of rape. Banks served more than 5 years in prison and then, on top of that, lived 5 years as being a sex offender. He lost his professional football career. He went to jail and the rest of his life was destroyed. I think he's about 33 now or something. He tried to get back into professional football when he was cleared. But of course, he had lost 10 years of professionalism and so lost his whole career. He was awarded somewhere around $140,000. Juanetta Gibson had received in compensation, it was about $1.5 million, but when you add everything up over the years, it turns out to be $2.6 million. The state is now looking for her to pay back $2.6 million. The reason that she made this false allegation of rape, this is not blaming her necessarily, even though it's very easy to hate her, especially if you're a guy and mother of a son or you have a brother. She accused him of rape because she didn't want her mother to know that she was sleeping with him voluntarily. And so she decided to accuse him of rape instead. When I see someone convinced of one thing and someone convinced of the opposite, I tend to think that maybe emotions getting involved. Almost never get right to the child, but we don't know the other factors behind it. So we have to look at how many fathers get custody as compared to how many fathers deserve to get custody. So are these fathers jobless? Are they drug addicts? We don't know. You do have several friends. Several friends doesn't represent the whole population. It might be that all of the guys that were mistreated happen to be your friends. Now, having said that, I'm not disagreeing with you in the sense that people are not treated fairly. A lot of people have sent a lot of hate to Juanetta Gibson for faking the rape allegation. But there's also what they don't bring up, which is the pressure upon her as a child to make sure she stayed a virgin by her mother. So that played a part in why she did this bad thing. She still did a bad thing. That's had other effects. And the other effect is that people like Kavanaugh can be defended out of fear of this happening again. And that doesn't mean he's innocent or guilty. Once again, let's talk about the different factors that are involved. Emotions are obviously involved. And this is something I find fascinating about humans. Because if you're a mother who's had a son who was falsely accused, or you believe was falsely accused, both of them fall into the same category. Or you're a guy who's been falsely accused, you are going to be biased towards being motivated by the fear of someone being falsely accused. That fear is different to someone being falsely accused. We notice from the Bible that Joseph apparently was falsely accused by the Pharaoh's wife and put in jail, even though apparently he rejected her advances. So this story goes back thousands of years. This is not a new story. It's not a good story, but we can't pretend that this is the first time this has happened. What we don't have is a mechanism to determine who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. I've now spoken about people who are biased towards defending Kavanaugh because of the fear of false accusations. Then you have those who will be biased towards women who make accusations because they know women, and I know women, and I'm sure many people here know women who have actually been sexually assaulted. And sometimes they will get hate just by making the accusation because of fear. So the problem is not that there are accusations. The problem is that we can't tell the difference between which ones are real and which ones are not. And so we resort to our natural biases. So you either have a fear of not a net fear. In other words, either your fear of women not being believed is greater, or your fear of men, in this case, losing their career over a false accusation is greater. Basically, you pick your fear and then I will know and everyone will know which position you're going to take on this topic. But that has nothing to do with what's really going on. What's really going on, apart from these fears, is the fact that we as humans don't have the technology yet to tell the difference between a woman who has been sexually assaulted, or a man, but in most cases a woman, and those who are providing false accusations because of fears that other people will know that they're having sex. There is no way at the moment, there is no way out of this situation that will not result in some injustice. Let's assume that Kavanaugh is innocent, and then let's assume he actually did do these things. If he is innocent, then the fact that the accusation existed in the first place has already damaged his career irrevocably in the minds of many people. Here's the other way. Let's assume now the other side, which is that he did do something, and because of the lack of information and evidence, he gets away with it. Then what will happen is that a lot of people on the other side will lose faith in the justice system and in the Supreme Court. So how do we protect the credibility of the Supreme Court? Well, we could protect the credibility of the Supreme Court by not having Kavanaugh on there in the first place, even if he is innocent. So someone is going to lose in this situation. Either Kavanaugh and his family will lose, either the people who were raped don't get justice, or the Supreme Court loses credibility. There is no way for none of those things to happen. One of those things is going to happen. We are deciding based upon which is our greater fear as to which outcome we can live with. Even if Kavanaugh is 100% innocent, doesn't even know this girl, let's say he never met her, he lived in Afghanistan his whole life, right? As a Catholic nun in Afghanistan, comes over to America, fakes the accent, develops this whole thing, comes in here, it's all great. Now, I don't remember where I was going with that. So if a female is sexually assaulted, people will hate Kavanaugh even more because they will believe that this society allows men to get away with it. Real fundamental question is, do we want to live in a society where people believe that there is no justice? That is the actual deep down problem here. And no one is dealing with it because there are people, many people are convinced of one outcome. If you are convinced, you have already left the party, unfortunately. Justice, OJ did it. Exactly, like OJ did it, exactly. But there's a different thing with OJ, because OJ was revenge by many African American people, I believe, who lived in a time where they were at least perceived to be treated in a worse way. And so take that revenge out on the justice system by freeing OJ. Perception matters. It really does. And I'm obsessed with perception now, because growing up with autism, my brain never understood what perception was. I never understood that someone can think differently to you. I physically never had that part of my brain that works, and I still don't. I just have to tell myself that. Juanetta Gibson recanted. Banks was eventually exonerated, his conviction overturned, and at the age of 28, he played for the Atlanta Falcons. What am I sipping on? Sipping on gin and juice. This is my Turkish/Arabic/Hebrew/Pakistani/Greek coffee. The kind of nightmare is what many Americans have in mind when they fear an aggressive clampdown on sexual violence. It's a legitimate fear. That was written by Nicholas Kristof in 2015. False allegations, according to one study, found that false allegations make up between 2% and 10% of rape cases. Victims, that are mostly women and girls, but also men and boys, are routinely tarnished or blamed. This study shows that 2 to 10% of rape cases are false allegations. Even if it was 0.0001, people will be scared of that 0.0001% chance that their son, their brother, or themselves can be falsely accused and lose their whole career. However, is that the price that we want to pay so that victims of sexual assault are believed? Here's a question. If we had the technology that could prove if the accusation was real or not, would you guys be okay with people making accusations? No, dangerous. I'm very fascinated by your answers. I learned so much about human beings. It's such a blessing that I have this technology that I can talk to you guys. I don't think his position should be sacrificed prior to proof. Well, to answer Saucy Mona Lisa, if his position is not sacrificed, something does still give way, and that is that the Supreme Court loses credibility amongst the percentage of the population. So something will still suffer. If he doesn't suffer, the Supreme Court will suffer. If the Supreme Court doesn't suffer, he will suffer. Some entity will suffer because of this accusation, guaranteed, yes. People will come on here, very smart people, and they make great comments, like Saucy Mona Lisa, great comment. I've heard many others, like from Sarah Ballerina and Scott, sometimes Scott, but Cassie. All of the comments for and against this situation are all very valid. I think 99% of them were very valid. But what happens is that people then take it one step further and go to a conclusion. Because these are my points, therefore this must be done. Why is it that other people go to another conclusion? It's because we don't have enough evidence to actually form a cohesive conclusion. And so we naturally regress to our biases. Studies show that about 98% of accusations are true. Now, I don't know if 98% are true, but even if 10% are true, those women and boys and men, etc., are suffering because they were victims and they can't actually say what happened to them. And there's probably many women like this, right? And maybe men too, of course, and boys, but where they were abused when they were 10, 15, and then the rest of their life have suffered with this abuse. Now, I had a huge amount of abuse that was not sexual, physical and verbal abuse by teachers, by adults, and by students. And I still haven't gotten over that. I go to a psych every week to talk about that. And there's something deep within me that I must contain and use for the power of good, coming on Scope, talking about these things in order to not let myself collapse into resentment. That is something we have to fight within ourselves. Absolutely. So it does exist. There's also a difference in the population scale and the individual scale. So an individual female who has been abused by a male, she's not going to give a damn that other men are falsely accused because it happened to her. So therefore, on an individual scale, it doesn't matter. And then someone like that is going to hear what you say when someone here says, oh, the men suffer. And she's going to say, F you, how dare you say that? Look what happened to me. Individual emotion, individual world perception, blanketing it over what we think is the actual world, which is not. No, I don't think anyone can claim a monopoly on oppression. There's a really good movie about that, and it's called The Insult. It's won huge awards over the world, and it was a Lebanese one between a Palestinian Muslim and a Lebanese Christian, and it was a brilliant movie in and of itself. The way it was done, the acting, the story was amazing as well. And obviously I liked it even more because it was to do with my father's homeland. The question is whether we can live in a society where genuine victims of sexual assault don't get justice. This will happen unless we can develop some sort of technology, or every guy is guilty immediately. If we say that every woman is believed, then you will eliminate any lack of justice for victims of sexual assault, except for the people who were accused, of course. You see, so you can't eliminate it, you can only push it from one side to the other. You either make more innocent men go to jail for something they didn't do, or you get innocent women who were abused not getting justice. Where do you draw the line? This is the problem. As you guys know, I'm a mad Tulsi Gabbard supporter, so I'm obviously on the left, but I don't want any political bias, temperament, agenda to have a majority. I want everyone's input so that we can eliminate bias. That's the whole point of the scientific method. It's to extract the truth from our biases. The only way we're going to get to the next step is having these discussions. They should be more public. It's not enough that it's just us. If we can grow, that's awesome. But at the same time, this idea of thinking is what needs to transcend our actual individual bodies. It's this idea that we are currently, say, shining out as a lamp, that other people need to do as well, so that the light can we can grow, yes, spread across America, Australia, and hopefully the world. This is how I see us conquering the world. It's with love, with science, with reason, with friendship, with common ground. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, take life one smack at a time.